I've already talked to you before and introduced myself, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the working group that we formed for Reimagining Terminology. So the people that are on that group is Julius Jefferson, Vivian Lewis, Margaret Meering, Susan Hay, Michael Hoon, who's not here with us today, and Sean Mitchell. I think it's really important that for me personally, but for many of us, to think about the most basic act of respect and recognition is for a human being to be known by your name. And the call from Dr. Jean Joseph is that we let our people be known by our names. This doesn't just apply to Indigenous people, although Dr. Jean Joseph is a renowned Wet'suwet'en and Quebec librarian from British Columbia, who also founded Wiwa Library and is one of my mentors. And the reason why I actually came into librarianship was due to her influence. As a baby librarian, one of the first things that I was doing was cataloging. That's kind of where I cut my teeth, and quickly noticed that library catalogs are really not geared towards diverse and Indigenous peoples. I think it's really important to think about who we are as libraries and as librarians. When we think about us being the heart of the community in public libraries or the heart of the university, we're really embodying that intergenerational transfer of knowledge through our carefully curated collections. So when we think about providing these resources to the public and to our students and faculty, and how we're furthering lifelong learning and creating a welcoming space, and I think that that's really important, but we're not actually doing that because we are actually reinforcing problematic terminology, and it ripples out to our users. And whether or not we realize it, when we're looking at those subject headings or access points that are underlined in blue in our catalogs, we're actually reinforcing dangerous stereotypes of peoples and people groups and nations. And we want to be respectful of all people regardless of race, religion, gender, sexuality, or societal class. And I think that's really critically important, that we don't reinforce those stereotypes and antiquated terminology that's currently in place. So previously, we've talked about this for years and years, and I think many of you have heard me speak when we were had our CFLA FCAB Truth and Reconciliation Committee report, answering the calls to action on behalf of library, archives, and museums with a group of people from across the country. And our fifth recommendation was about decolonizing the way that we talk about other people and the epistemologies within cataloging and classification practices. Many of you are aware that OCLC came out with a Reimagining description report, which was widely circulated and accepted internationally. And of course, they provide much of the cataloging that we're currently using in libraries. And I think it's really important to remember that when libraries were formed, when the classification systems were developed, really it came from a place, from a culture of whiteness. And it's important to recognize that there's obstacles that are put into place when we're talking about classifying, but also to subject headings. And it really does start with subject headings, because then that leads into classification. And I think that that's really important. Many people have done in-house systems to address some of the problematic terminology, but it's not really feasible and it's not working within all people. So people are doing the work, they're duplicating it across the country, but it's not being shared. And I think it's really important for us to advocate for this work at the highest level, which is part of what we try to do as the North American Regional Division, because much of those systems that are developing subject headings or classification systems actually originate here in North America, whether it's Library of Congress or the Dewey system. And I think that that's really important. Much of this work currently is being done by diverse and underrepresented communities, often unsupported, unacknowledged, it's off the side of their desk, but it is important for us to elevate and support their work. So part of where we wanted to go with this is not working in silos, but creating relationships. And our goal is that we will have more of a larger overarching webinar, hopefully developed for March of this year, we've been able to advocate with both Library and Archives Canada, our incoming president, who is also our Library and Archivist of Canada, Leslie Weir, and the current IFLA president, and OCLC, the leaders at OCLC and Library of Congress and ALA have all endorsed working on this, and I think that that's really important. But I think part of it is that one of the things that we have to be concerned about is that our advocacy has to continue, and it needs to be overarching, and so that's part of where we want to talk about this and encourage changes at that level, because even doing it at the local level, provincial or state level is not going to work, and so that's part of where we're starting some of the conversations. And I think some of the kind of more granular conversations happened as part of the Respectful Terminology Platform project. If you haven't had a chance to go and view the webinars that were put out this fall with Ripples of Connection, I encourage you to go to NICLA's YouTube channel, which is it's National Indigenous Knowledge and Language, but we talked with a number of different people to be able to profile their work. As we know, a lot is going on in Canada, to be able to make changes, and also in the United States. So there's various pockets that are working on this, but it's our really goal to be able to encourage that in North America as a whole. So we've been moving forward, and so much of that advocacy is happening behind the scenes, but we hope to be able to have that conversation in the near future, which will be broadcast on IFLA. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for being here today, and I think we have time for some questions and comments now, which I will turn the floor back to Vivian. And thank you so much for your time and attention. I ended up running around.